Welcome to How to Be a CG Superstar. That's only partly hyperbolic. It's once you're in a studio, preparing for the studio, getting into a studio, your first steps in the studio, and how to be a great CG artist in a large CG studio. So we've got here a fantastic panel of professionals from the industry. We'll get them each to introduce themselves, starting with Andy Hayes.
I'm talking, yes. Hello, my name is Andy Hayes. I am the head of effects for Framestore. I look after the effects team in London and Montreal. So I guess I have like 57 people with my team that I'm responsible for growing. So I do all of the interviewing, and I look at hundreds and hundreds of reels a year and do hundreds of interviews a year probably too. So a bit of experience of hopefully I can try and impart some of the things that you shouldn't do or should do today.
Up next is Matt Estela.
Hello, I'm Matt Estela. I was at Animal Logic for quite a long time. I'm a relatively recent convert to Houdini. And I am internet famous to a certain degree, where I write a website called CG Wiki, where I put all of my Houdini blatherings. But now I'm teaching at University of Technology Sydney, where we're running the UTS ALA, the Animal Logic Academy, where we teach VFX. It's pretty cool.
Next up is Shaun Roth.
Is it on? Cool. I'm head of effects at DNEG, Vancouver. I've been at DNEG since about 2011, and much like Andy, my job is related around the growth of the department. So I'm a lot of kind of crewing, a lot of kind of hiring. I see lots of reels as well. At the same time, I'm involved a lot in the pitching and work of comm, and then trying to kind of like grow the technology at DNEG.
And then we've got Ben Watts.
Hey guys, my name is Ben Watts. I'm a freelancer from Swan Hill, a small town in Victoria, Australia. And I usually jump around from studio to studio probably every 3 to 4 weeks, working on various projects, things like commercials, TV shows. I do a little bit of work in film, and I see 0 reels.
And Andrew Lowell.
I'm Andrew Lowell, and I've been a senior artist for quite a few years through the big studios. Last few years, I've made a career educating and bringing up quite a bit of students that are now fairly prolific in the industry, so I have a lot of pride in those students. I also do seminar work around the world and teach classes in Houdini. On my own time, I use Houdini for things it's not meant to be used for, such as procedural music composition.
So let's start by kind of defining CG Superstar. It's we just threw around the name back at the office, but it's really the artists that stand out, right? Like what there's kind of your bell curve of the average kind of CG artist, but the ones that really stand out, and you can hopefully you can sort of see those people right away in the studio, and let's start by talking about what that looks like. Maybe we'll start with you, Matt.
So I suppose what I kind of noticed running some teams in effects was there is an expectation that everyone should know the bread and butter stuff. So on any given film, you're going to have usual levels of smoke, explosions, RBD, particles, and you kind of expect that everyone should be able to get some of that. Excuse me. I mean, I suppose the first thing is if anyone calls themselves a CG superstar, they're going to get stabbed, because that's a bad look. But definitely people that I notice are ones who can throw me a really elegant left-of-field solution. So we'll give them, a certain challenge that I think will be a pretty straightforward sim thing, and I see a result, and they'll kind of hint that it's not a simulation. It's some sort of cunning procedural trick that they worked out from having played around at home. And it's those sort of creative problem solvers, and I think, well, you've done that once. We had this other tricky problem reserved for this, senior artist, but you just have a go, and then they knock it out the park, and you go, well, okay, have a more difficult problem, and you keep challenging them, and they just keep coming back with ever better results. That to me is a sign of a really talented artist, and the ones that we try and sort of encourage and lift up.
Thanks. Shaun?
Yeah, a lot was kind of mentioned there. At the same time, for me, when it comes to it's like a nice balance between the technical but also the creative, to have a very creative eye. I mean, I got some artists that are incredibly technical. I can't even fathom the kind of things that they're doing, but in terms of their creative eye, they just have problems. Vice versa on the other side, someone that's very creative but doesn't have the technical background to back them up, that they can't do the things they want to do, so they need help. So someone that's very balanced between that is someone I notice right away. And then to really get to that next tier is really the attitude. Getting the ones that don't have the ego about their work, are willing to share, willing to collaborate with other artists. And at that stage, some visual effects supervisors will start asking specifically for these artists, and that's when you start to really see these are the guys to kind of watch for.
How'd you define it, Andy?
Who's a student here? Are students here? Okay, yeah, cool. Because I think it's, at the end of the day, you're going to be in a team, and you're going to be producing something to contribute to a film. And I think what's really important as well for someone who's leading a show, who has a plethora of stuff on their shoulders, is they don't really want to worry about things. So if you're dependable and you're trustworthy, and you are a person that can take direction, take ideas, even if they're not your ideas, the ones that you have in your head, and don't push your own agenda. I think the person who can, to be simple, just do as you're told, at least to begin with, especially if you're a student coming in, and then bring extra things to the table as well. So when I look at, I think my superstars, maybe the people who start out, are people that who are listened, and they gained a degree of trust with us. I can give them something to do. They're going to probably, to be a superstar, going to excel. They're going to have a great eye. They're going to have great technology. Going to make systems that are really simple yet flexible, and those things too. But just be able to have someone deliver, and to deliver sort of continuously as well, which means keeping it simple, iterating often, being able to invite other people into the process as well, so that we're really clear where they're going with their work. We know that we can trust them to deliver it. And so there's a massive difference between people you can trust and people you can't trust, and the worries. If you're someone who takes the worry away from the lead or the supervisor, that's a tremendous sort of commodity, and that will get you a long way, and before you know it, the supes will be requesting to have you on your show. And that's a really good situation. Well, actually, it's a bad situation for me because everybody always wants the same people. But yeah, that's another thing I wanted to add.
What about you, Ben?
I can't really speak to the studio scenario so much because I'm on my own most of the time, but I can just tell you from my point of view, like trying to, be a better artist for the studios that I'm working for, it's really just, for me, in terms of like the final product, I'm always just trying to make things look as good as possible, because at the end of the day, if it doesn't look good, it doesn't matter how technical the setup is or whatever, it doesn't really matter. So, I'm always trying to like add as much detail into systems and setups as I can. And then like from the point of view of trying to be like a good employee, I guess I'm just always trying to, be, work quickly, efficiently, and really just get the stuff out the door in a timely manner, and do stuff as they expect, without just always sort of over deliver rather than drag things out. Yeah.
Andrew?
It's interesting as an educator because people would assume that people would be different in school than they would in a studio. And I've taught at this point, through my 14 years as a teacher, hundreds of students, and I've never seen any difference whatsoever between how people are in school and how people behave once they get into the studio. So one of the main reasons it makes either a student or a studio professional, in my view, really do phenomenal is, do they bring the people up underneath them or around them? Do they always collaborate? Are they generally having fun in what they're doing, and they're carrying that energy through the entire group of people they're working with. We've all seen competitive people or people with large egos, but really at the end of the day, the people that survive the marathon are the people that are just really excited to do this and share it with everyone.
So let's take those same principles, and those are great answers, and apply it to the Houdini artist specifically. Is there a difference in the Houdini environment when it comes to those kind of standout people and how they use the software? Is there a way to frame it in that context?
Yeah. Yes. Sure. I mean, I tend to work on shows that have larger teams. When I say large, not as large as some places. A large team for me is probably like 15 people, going up to 30 people. Invariably, there'll be a lot of reuse. So I'm looking for someone that can help define something, a solution to a problem, that can then be given to other people. Maybe even people more junior. I mean, that's an ideal situation if you've got someone who can build something, wrap it up in a fashion which caters for like 90%. I think trying to cater for 100% can sometimes overcomplicate something. It caters for like 90%, 95% of use cases, has that kind of vision going forward and can wrap things up, and then I can just take it off his hands or her hands and give it to, say, maybe someone more junior, and they can go on and do more things. So I think I do have some superstars that don't do that, and so they tend to be doing the one-off things. But then I have some real, for me in a team trying to solve a show, if I've got people that can do that and then wrap things up, so that and train and be sort of keen to do that. That's a good commodity that I think SideFX Houdini tools offer. There's a ton of stuff to make elegant, nice, customizable, simple solutions for things, even if they are quite complicated underneath. So yeah, sure.
Yeah, I'd say everything Andy said. I mean, I don't like agreeing with you, but yep. The things that I've noticed is just to recognize, as someone else said, that working in a VFX studio on a show, it's all about iteration and versions. And so you'll find people who you give them a task, and they will, some of them will go away and just work on the perfect solution for the better part of three weeks, and you're really meant to be trying to show something every day just to make sure that progress is correct. Because it may well be that they do hit the brief exactly as it was promised, but then you show it to the director and they go, oh, that's actually not what I want. Can we go another way? But we could have recognized that on day one if you just got something up that just indicated the way that it was going to go. And I think Houdini can allow people to make a very quick first pass bosh, and then you can add another node to add a bit more complexity and add this and then take it out to simulation and back again in a way that you really couldn't do in other software. So kind of embracing that side of it, that you can get a really first pass quick simple bosh and then iterate on top. That to me is a really useful workflow.
Totally agree with that, for sure, yeah.
I don't like you agreeing with me either.
I agree with both of them. It is like, Houdini does kind of give you the flexibility to kind of do those quick iterations and make it procedural enough that you can quickly update things as stuff coming from upstream will keep coming to your way. At the same time, though, because Houdini is so open and flexible, it can easily, with the wrong kind of virus, leave down the rabbit hole, so to speak, where all of a sudden you are turning into a giant science project. And a lot of people, if they can't work their way out of it, you might end up in a bit of a hole and in a bit of a mess yourself. So that's something to be really careful of, because it's easy to kind of make a mistake here, you work your way down, there's a mistake. The mistake was further up, but instead you've just decided to put more down to try and make up for that mistake, so you just have patch over patch over patch, and it can get really messy fast. So I think being able to kind of see that and recognize that early on, and like I say, get the stuff in front of your supervisors to make sure you're in the right ballpark so you're not wasting time, is kind of, a good workflow for sure that Houdini can supply, or also ruin.
Ben, you've been mentoring some people through the internet.
Yep.
You must see now some different ways of working and...
Yeah, I was just going to say, for me personally, because again, I'm not in this big studio environment, I'm on my own. I was just going to say, I'm so used to having to work quickly and iterate daily. Like, I always have to produce results for the client to see, and I'm so used to doing that yeah, hearing like the ways that you guys sort of work and things like that, I know I couldn't imagine it any other way. So, but definitely, yeah, I can see the way that I used to work was I used to go in for full detail off the bat sort of thing and go hard, and then like the director would change his mind, come back, and all of a sudden you've gone too far and you've got to pull it back. Where now I sort of just I chip away at it bit by bit and just show them stuff that doesn't look as pretty daily. And I find that I just, you can get to the result more accurately and faster doing it like that. So, but yeah, there's just so many ways to do things that, yeah, I think if you can sort of like learn that straight away, that you can go to that bad place, so to speak, pretty quickly. It's better off.
Yeah, and specifically with check. Okay, a little bit. Okay, so with Houdini specifically, obviously it's a massive, giant program, and it's also effects is a very black box solution among the studios, so it can entail full generalism. So I think the question, like Houdini specifically, since it's capable of almost infinite possibilities, I think people need to really be comfortable with learning very quickly, like to go into the project and assume you don't know anything about how to do the effect, and it's not so much how quick of a worker they are as how quick of a learner they are. Then they can iterate and get the things that they know will work first, and then the experimentation after, as a few of the other guys said about the quick iterations. But at the end of the day, everyone has to learn the effect from scratch, kind of, because there's no two effects alike. So.
Great answers. So if we're talking about the CG superstar in the studio, let's say in their mid-20s, and I think they're adjusting the volume on the mic, maybe? Okay. Let's scroll back to leading up into getting into their career, right? So let's talk about education for a little bit. What types of education do you prefer to see in young artists? Do you care if they're formally trained, if they go to a formal CG or Houdini education school? Or does it matter? Can they teach themselves off tutorials on the internet and that kind of thing? Maybe we'll start with Shaun.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's about the real, and the school is kind of secondary for me, because the school is good to have, but we're not pulling in people's science papers into effects. I need to see that you can do the work and that you can do it well. And because of all the resources online, for someone who is dedicated enough, and I know I couldn't do it, but someone that is dedicated enough that teaches themselves at home, yeah, if the reel's looking great and they've shown the ability to kind of deliver all aspects of what an effects 2D is expected of, then yeah, I don't think the school is necessarily super important.
Whereas clearly I think it's very important, and everyone should come to my school and learn amazing stuff. No, I mean, I think you can definitely learn it yourself. I mean, I was self-taught for Maya, and obviously with a bit of help from co-workers at Animal Logic, I'm self-taught for Houdini. The main thing I suppose is you do have to be a certain kind of personality to be that self-driven to maintain that focus. And it was weird to realize, and this sounds like a terrible humble brag, but it was relatively easy for me to devote time outside of work hours or during work hours to study it and to play with stuff and to experiment and just think, well, surely this is how everyone does it. But you meet people, you meet co-workers, you meet students who want to learn it, and it's not for everyone. Not everyone has that sort of almost obsessive mindset to just play with Houdini at all waking hours to the detriment of family, loved ones, eating, that kind of thing. And that's something that schools can provide. If you do have a healthier work-life balance, then maybe a school is better for you because it's a bit more structured and you get to talk to people who should know what they're talking about. The other advantage of going to school, I think, or assuming you go to a good school,
like my one.
is that we really push hard on the treating our school like it's a studio. So we don't really have classes or lectures. We run it like it's a big studio, and we do desk rounds in the morning, and we give feedback notes, and then we do dailies in the afternoon, and we try and sort of plan for the week, and we plan for a big review at the end of every couple of weeks, like you do in a studio. And that just seems the most obvious way to run it. And it's funny how quickly the students sort of got in the vibe of it. And at first no one really understood it, and it's like, why does this work this way? And it's like, well, this is how all studios work. And we've had a few students come in fresh to Animalogic who went to a more traditional school, or people who haven't gone to schools at all, and that whole regular feedback, regular review system that we're just talking about in terms of iterative improvements every day towards a goal is just foreign to them. But that's one thing that you can get a shortcut into, is to learn how studios work at the right school.
Yeah, I want to quickly backtrack a bit, just to make sure I don't blast all the educators on the panel. Yeah. That is kind of the one thing that, so of all the people I've hired, I think maybe one out of like the 100 or 200 or whatever actually was self-taught and good enough in the sense that they could come into a position. So that's why I say you have to be really self-dedicated. But the things mentioned there that I know a lot of schools are doing now is the thing you won't get at home trying to teach yourself is that production experience. Be sitting there in a room and having someone look at your work and, building up that thick skin, because you will be in a room with a supervisor one day that's going to tell them that they hate your stuff, and you can't leave the room being like, ooh, like you got to kind of be like, oh, okay, I guess I got to try again, because you got to deliver that thick. I'd say you're going to be like half your job is just taking critique from someone who thinks they know better than you or whatever, right? But so in that case, having that kind of education from the right kind of school is very important.
Like mine.
Like his.
Andy?
Yeah, I mean, I guess Eddie Van Halen taught himself to play guitar, so I guess you could sit at home and you could learn the tool very well, but I think there's at least 2 or 3 things that you'll pick up. You'll be, if you go to education, you'll be in an environment where you'll collaborate with other people and you'll work in teams. I think most places have, do you have team building, team projects?
Well, yes, we do, Andy. Thank you for asking.
Okay, so sounds like a very good school. So team projects are key to all the places I've been to. I think time as well. That with education, you'll be a good course, and there'll probably be bad courses out there, but there are undoubtedly very, very good ones. And if you want to go to one, just research it. You have lots of other different things coming in you've never even experienced. Maybe things that are not Houdini related or effects related or whatever. I mean, I went to a good school. I went to Bournemouth Uni. And I experienced lots of things that weren't necessarily applicable to my job directly, but things that probably influenced me and helped me make artistic choices and decisions, or opened up maybe new technology and that I'd never really thought of unless I'd accidentally stumbled across them. And I think you just get put in a pressure cooker of, in a good school will put you in a pressure cooker of that, and you'll have loads of things flying around, and you'll just be deciding, well, I can't decide what I want to do. I've got to decide the things I can't do, and I'd have trouble focusing. So you'll just be barraged with stuff, which is a really cool experience thing to be in. Bless you. I think the other thing as well is your peers. Contacts are really important. Bless you. So my first job was definitely made through my contacts at university, for sure. He came in and he did a sabbatical at university, and then I asked him for a job a little bit later, and I got it. So I don't even think I did a reel. I can't remember. So contacts are important. That definitely helps going forward. And so I think we'll talk about it later on for sure, but not having an ego and being a person who other people want to employ is really key. I'm sure I said 3 things. Have I said 2 things or 3 things? I can't remember now. Yeah, I think I'll leave it there.
What about you, Andrew? Do you believe in formal education?
Sometimes. Yeah. So no, I actually share the perspective that it can be done either way. I'm personally self-taught in graphics. I didn't ever have a teacher in graphics, but I was not self-taught in music recording. And I do think that even if you are self-taught, you still need advice from masters of their craft. You still need that one person or a few people to say, to like demystify hundreds of hours in a few minutes of conversation. So I think the way Houdini used to be taught in the old days, where the studios had 5 Houdini artists like the big ones did, is that it would be passed on from senior to junior. And they would go through like hours and hours of self-learning in a series of minutes where you really got that amazing perspective. I was self-taught to a point in Houdini, but then once I got to the studio, I was able to absorb lots of amazing things from the masters. And that's really where I feel like I got most of my graphics education. If you can get that in a school, then that's amazing. And you should try to soak it up as much as you can. If you can't, then do whatever you can to find the people that can get you there. So, regardless of if they're exactly in the field or not.
Yeah, so I feel like I'm a bit of an odd one out because, yeah, I'm obviously fully self-taught, and you know, I wish I had learned computer science or something like that, just for like, you know, even like some of the fundamentals about, you know, coordinate systems and just, you know, those real basic things. Even, you know, I only started to write code, you know, about a year and a half ago, and that was just through sort of the need for it in Houdini up to a certain point. So, you know, I have worked in-house before, and I don't know, it kind of wasn't for me. I don't know whether it was that particular experience, but, you know, I'm lucky to have a lifestyle now where I can, you know, studio hop all the time and get a lot of variety in my work. And so, yeah, I really enjoy that. And, you know, I sort of just put in the hours like Matt probably did as well. What you described sounds very familiar to me. You know, when I picked up Houdini, I was just a grinder. Like, I'd stay up to the crazy hours of the morning just learning it, trying to rebuild the setups that I used to be able to do in Cinema 4D or whatever, even though I wasn't there very long either, about a year and a half, until I could get to the point where I was comfortable. And once I actually got asked to do a Nike shoe commercial, once I sort of picked that up and was able to do it, you know, what they needed there, work thankfully just keep coming in for me. So I don't know, it's something that I wish I had gone to school to a certain point to learn, because I think it would have sped up my path even further. But yeah, I think people definitely, I think it's just about passion. Like, I've got a lot of passion for Houdini and learning it. So I think if you want to do anything in life that bad, you can make it happen. It's just, you know, it's not going to hurt along the way to get advice from, you know, these guys that have this experience in this environment.
I'd say though, if you do need that passion, right? If you want to be a rock star, if you just go, I used to work at university for 5 years, and if you don't have that and you expect the course to teach you and give you a job, it's never, well, it might happen, but you need the best people, always the people that just use it, but they still have that drive within inside them to make their stuff better. You know, just going to a course won't make you a film director.
You've definitely got to have that fire. Like I was saying earlier, like I love really high detailed pieces and stuff like that, and you know, it takes time to do that stuff. Like, I can, you know, I did a presentation earlier where I showed how to do some like knitting in Houdini. It's just like a procedural rig, and you can knock that up in like 10 minutes, but it's that extra, you know, 10% you put into stuff like that that'll take you another 10 hours or whatever, or days, and it's that, like that willingness to stick at it and pull that out of it is, I think, what makes a difference. To your question earlier too about what makes someone a superstar, you know, you look at people's work and those ones that stand out, you know, they've put in that time, and I think that's what it's about.
This may not apply to everybody, but in the studio that you work at, if you work in a studio, are there mentoring systems or in-house training programs or whatever to sort of take you from a basic to a next level?
Yeah, I mean, certainly we do have mentor schemes when people come in. We do, actually, before you come in, there are what kind of schemes we've got. We have internships. There is now an apprenticeship. So when I was younger, there was apprenticeships for being a plumber, being an electrician, and now there's apprenticeships for being visual effects, which is quite cool. So it's good. It's getting better. In the company itself, we are going through a training initiative right now. So we do have, like I said, mentors. Part of my job is to try and take whatever we have and put it into some kind of curriculum. So maintain documentation, wikis, and things is boring yet interesting at the same time. So there is like an effects curriculum, and we try and give you a week, which is not a lot, but try and even get a week out of production people to not actually deliver anything, just to kind of sit down and learn about how we do stuff. We do that. And then we try and still a collaborative environment. So the effects guys and all the departments all sit together. We started that in effects so that all the knowledge, doesn't matter what show you're on, where you are, you're sitting next to someone. I don't know if I've made it public awareness, but we're actually a bit strategic about who sits next to who as well. So we do think about that sort of stuff too. There's different company models of different ways of seating people together. So we look into that. Just don't tell everybody that much. And yeah, we try and do show and tell sessions. We do training sessions for the department as well. I mean, to be fair, that's been at every company I've worked at. Animalogic and DreamWorks have all done that. So I think big places realise that they can probably afford the time to put into training to make you more efficient and productive, I guess.
Matt, maybe you can speak to your time at Animal.
Yeah, I'm now off the book, so I can go full disclosure. It was shit. No, it was good. I mean, I think in a similar vibe, within effects, the department was always kept together. It wasn't sort of broken up per show generally. And the effects super over there, Bon Vivant, Fabulous Man, friend of Andy, Miles Green, really encouraged a sense of everyone chats, everyone sort of gets on, and there was a lot of, you know, oh, I've been asked to do this kind of effect, does anyone have any ideas? And we'd all sort of spitball and have a chat. As I sort of got into more leady roles and then got into the VR role, I would do everything I could to avoid doing work. See, now I can say this, that I'm not there anymore. And I just like to have a chat. You know, this may surprise you, I like to have a chat. So I would actively just go around and speak to other departments outside of effects and just try and sort of push Houdini into there, because it was fun to throw the cat among the pigeons and to, you know, disrupt workflows a bit with possibly better ways of doing it. So I kind of, and I got a bit of a reputation. There's Miles Green, way! I was saying horrible things about you, Miles, okay. So just kind of getting to a point of identifying other departments that could use it, and, you know, rather than point them to documentation or point them to stuff, I mean, I'm right there, I got nothing better to do. So I'd go, let me show you a trick, and, you know, I'd show them how to do some stuff, and then and modeling began to use it more, and I'd pass by some friends in matte painting, and they go, oh, I'm struggling with this thing. Let me show you a trick, and I'd show them, and so it began to seep into departments. But we're talking about this, the flip side of that, then back in effects, to be like, can't seem to get an effects license. Anyone know what's going on? And they go, oh shit, is that person from matte painting using it now? And so we'd kind of make a bit of a problem for ourselves. But we did do a few programs of, we did some weekends workshops where we got in people just from really different backgrounds. So we got some people who were doing computational architecture, and some lawyers who were keen, and graphic designers, and Miles, myself, and Matt Ebb, who was here last year. We taught Houdini to people who had never used it before. And we hired in quite a few of those in the end, actually. And they've all gone on to do amazing things. So yeah, there was a pretty healthy culture at Animal of trying to spread the love and learn from each other and share. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, at DNEG we have kind of formal training. I mean, it's a bit frustrating too, because you'll take all this time to set up formal training, and then someone will do something amazing on a show. You're like, ugh, gotta update that training. So it's always a constant, you know, keeping up to it. And so we find it kind of more useful, even though we are updating the training to get your basics. You know, we will have our kind of internal hug sessions after a show's done where some cool stuff's on there, and we'll get everyone in the theater room to kind of go over and to see it, share the scenes, documentation, all that stuff. And that's really useful to people, and they start asking each other questions. And then lately we've been trying a new one that I'm still fighting with tech with a bit because I need the disk space, but issuing out kind of like a challenges amongst the crew. Like, here's this really intense challenge amongst the effects crew. If anyone can actually achieve it, you know, there's some incentives, and we're still working on incentives. It might be like, you know, $50 at the coffee shop or something like that, you know, but something to kind of give, because a lot of them are actually, you know, want to be able to prove themselves. and the training kind of gets you kind of through the door a bit, but then the challenge stuff that we're trying to issue out right now will kind of give them a chance to be like, oh, I can kind of show them what I'm doing. I can get out of rain and snow for a while on my shots. So yes, we definitely do a bit of training and mentoring for sure.
And Ben, I'm guessing not so much, doesn't really apply to you. Andrew, maybe back to your time.
Well, I mean, got a few little things to throw in there. So, I mean, if you think of learning high-end effects and in a studio, or high-end Houdini as a language, then I think some of the best training that I've personally had and people I've seen have not been in a formal classroom, even at a studio setting, where they have a new technology or rollout and the kind of the class, and that it's really an immersive environment. So always asking, never being annoying, but always asking coworkers for help and to share and collaborate, like that's learning to speak that language. So, I mean, that's really, I think, where the best learning happens. That's how people are brought up and how people like other people being brought up. Not in the, like, oh, I'm better than, people actually really want other people to do well if they're speaking the same language. So. Yeah.
And that's actually a nice segue to the next thing, which is, what are your favorite online resources for learning? And oh, do you have one, Matt? Maybe we'll start with you, Matt.
Oh shit. Well, no, actually, the forums. So Oddforce and the SideFX forums are great. It's just one of the. I met Thomas Slankick at Anaheim a couple of years ago, and we were chatting about what was our in, what was the hook. And we realized we both got into it in a big way through the same method, where we found the Oddforce forums and we just read them. But after reading it for a bit and getting a few skills, we would see someone post a question and go, no one's posted an answer yet. I'm going to have a go. And not necessarily to post back an answer yet, but just to see if you could solve it. And for a while you couldn't, but then you could. And then realize, oh, no one else has posted an answer. I'll post. So you do the thing, and you get a little a heart or a like, and you go, oh. And then someone else posts a question, and go, oh, I can answer that one, and you do it, and that became really addictive. And so there was a period there where it was my kind of crack cocaine of just like every day it's like, question, come on, bring it, and I would like really aggressively post answers as much as I could. Quite often to be smacked down by Thomas saying, yeah, here's a better answer. And we realized we were kind of racing each other there for a while, but he was sort of winding down on his addiction just as I was ramping up. But yeah, that was just, I think, because the way that I was learning, and it was all very sort of context-based for the show I was on, and it was just on that path. But to get questions really outside of what I was thinking about at the time was what really helped me kind of broaden my knowledge. So yeah, the forums are a really handy resource. And now I think Discord is taking that over a bit as well. So there are a few very, very healthy chat rooms where people are just like actively smack talking each other and sharing files and stuff. It's really good.
Yeah, the Discord is Think Procedural, yeah?
Sure.
I believe so.
Yeah, that's one of them. There's a better one, which is Secret Source.
Andy, what about you for online resources?
Yeah, I like videos. I remember I've got a nice warm place in my heart for Peter Quint videos. Just those little, his sultry tones. Just 20-minute little thing I could just read and digest. So yeah, that worked for me. Yeah, and I think we did an exercise recently of just trying to gather all of the videos that are out there on the web and put them in one place in our company. The ones that were obviously legal, and there's tons out there. I think there's like two, three, four top sites, and there's like dozen. I think like 70 videos or something in our little library of Houdini videos. So there's so much stuff out there. But yeah, Peter Quint always for me was, I don't think he's done anything for like a year, and it all moved to YouTube, didn't it, or something after Vimeo tried to close him down. I don't know. He's retired. He's collected his nothing, and he's retired, I guess. Yeah. So, but I like him.
Shaun, do you have any favorites?
Yeah, I mean, like Matt, like, the forums. I mean, I kind of watched a lot of the videos to begin with, and, you'd get some really good ones. You would get some of the ones that are kind of very droll and just, like that, those kind of things. And those are hard for me to watch. I couldn't do it.
Mine.
Don't watch Ben's videos. But then the forums are really good too, because you can just pop on the forums, and it's like you might have watched some of the videos and you don't actually know still how to achieve what you want or how to get what you want out of the video. So you pop on the forums and you ask that question. And then someone who's an addict like this is going to pop up right away, and you might get your answer. But then a discussion kind of happens, and from that discussion, you might actually learn even more beyond what you were hoping to learn. So, I mean, those discussion forums are really kind of useful for sure. Yeah, those are kind of like the odd force and everything, and then there's a lot of good videos around there, yeah.
Ben?
Yeah, so I've been in Houdini now for nearly 3.5 years. So when I started, there wasn't really a lot. You know, there was Peter, the man. But I think Rohan Delvey, the Indian guy, like he was doing some good stuff, like doing some training series and stuff like that. I remember getting a couple of his things like really early on. But I do this thing like daily where I type Houdini into Vimeo. Do any of you guys do that? Like, it's just good because yeah, I think Kim does it as well. Like, it's just so interesting to see what pops up because it's so vast now too. Seeing that trend towards that like more abstract kind of effects as well. But yeah, there wasn't really a lot. I guess I looked at the forums a little bit like you guys, but I think just putting in the man hours, just making mistakes, learning that way for me was probably where it was at. There wasn't a lot of resources unless it was some CG Society stuff, which you had to sign up for, which cost a fair bit and wasn't always available at the time when you needed it. But yeah, there wasn't really much.
So you find that there's a lot more now?
Oh yeah, definitely. For sure, like you were saying, you could probably round up like at least probably 100 tutorials now that are got some fairly recent content within them. But yeah, it's certainly it'd be a much different landscape learning it now online, like especially if you wanted to do it yourself. Like there's a heap of free content. So
Andrew?
Well, I've done quite a bit of online training in the past for Effects PhD. 3 courses, I think. And I'm not going to go and plug a certain company or like I'm doing some more ventures and things like that. But I actually want to say what I think doesn't work. So because there's so, like I remember I started Houdini with 1 PDF and a NURBS rocket ship. That was the only online resources for when I was trying to figure it out. And now there's just thousands and thousands of whether it's like a little video or a big involved video or something like that. So what I want to say is like, since there's so much noise online, I think it's important to avoid buttonology. So I personally want a video that is actually takes me through the problem solving process and it helps me explore things that I can use in other ways after I'm done with the tutorial, not just a click here, click here, click here, because we all know there's a lot of those videos, but they tend to become obsolete very quickly, and I don't really get much out of them personally. So I try to skim through the 90% of the videos and get to the 10% where I really feel like I get some long-term knowledge that I can hold on to, yeah.
So just to be clear, not one of you are going to mention my website, you pricks. What? I was being modest, you bastards.
I've never been to it.
What?
you've got a website.
I'll also say that nobody said SideFX.com, which has the whole library.
SideFX.com is by far my most favorite. No, who was that?
By the way, SideFX.com has an amazing learning section of tutorials with hundreds where you can filter by.
SideFX.com.
Reels. Let's talk about Reels for a minute. What are the sort of top, the things that should be in a reel and things that shouldn't be in a reel? What do you leave in and leave out? What's the good and the bad in a reel? We'll start with Shaun.
Well, I mean, leave the good in and take the bad out. I mean, if you're starting like fresh off, and there's a lot of times that you'll see something come up and you'll see that it really is just someone pushed the shelf button and then proved they could actually go through the shelf button or through a very basic tutorial, and I would leave those out. Because I hope a lot of us will kind of recognize those kinds of things. And we want to see is like definitely start with the shelf button if you're learning, because that'll give you your basic bones, but like push it beyond, and we want to see, how far you can push it. If you can push the ocean tank button, great. Okay, now I'm going to throw a tower in there. Okay, cool, you can do a collision. Now I'm going to blow up the tower. Okay, now we're getting interesting, because now we're seeing that thought process is pushing a bit further. The other thing is like recognizing your better work over your, like, I always like to see the best work first. I mean, we always said this too, like, this kind of goes around a lot. It's like, don't spend days and weeks kind of like getting it to work with your boiler room music soundtrack, because I'm not going to look at, a lot of us aren't going to look at it with sound on, because we're kind of doing it in between things. I can look at this reel, okay, and I got to go into this meeting. I'm going to come back, look at this reel, I'm going to skim through it, and that's kind of cool, and then you'll look at it kind of more. So it's really about, like, grasping attention. And I think for me, personally, I don't like reels that are like beyond kind of like the 2.5, 3 minute mark. Like, even that's kind of really pushing it. And you see one that come up that's like 8 minutes long, you're like, oh, I don't know. Yeah, exactly. So I think, being able to recognize what your best work is. And if you only have like 30 seconds of footage that you're happy with, if you're really happy with it, there's no harm in trying, but maybe just try to populate up just a bit more and show, what you can do.
Andy?
I'm going to admit that when I look at a reel, I mean, the reel is there to get you an interview, at least that's the way I treat it. I guess everybody's different, but I'm just looking, is this person good enough to talk to? And then I'll be figuring out, then the interviews when I kind of probe their knowledge a bit more, figure out if they're going to work in a team, if they're going to be complete idiot, or if they're going to work with us. So I must admit, when I look at reels, I mean, just we have a security policy. Most companies do if you're working on certain studios. I physically can't hear sound coming from outside on the web anyway. There's this, so don't even think about it. I wouldn't even worry about sound. It's more annoying having sound on there than not. So forget sound. You don't need to edit it. I totally concur with that. But I remember once I was looking at a reel and I just kind of turned around and there was a guy, he's like a mid, behind me, he's like, oh. And I went, well, what's the matter? And he went, is that how you look at reels? I was like, yeah. And he's like, oh my God. And I just look at it, honestly, the first thing pops up, and that's going to grab me. The first thing I see is going to grab me, and then I go right, and I click, 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 just to kind of get a feel for it. And then from that, I can tell, like, is this someone to talk to, or is this not? So, like, it's that impression you just said. It's like the first thing has got to be a cool thing. And I use DNEG stuff quite a lot, actually, because what DNEG did is they went to university and they set a project, and so it's cool because it's like a standard of like every all the students that tend to come from. I think so Bournemouth University did it, and I see other universities have stolen that thing as well. So it's really cool. I'm looking for like something that's I think you mentioned it earlier as well, that extra attention to detail, really. So someone who's done something that is doesn't have any problems with it. So have you got like rigid bodies that are shaking and jittering around, and like looking for details that you can fix? And with the DNEG thing, I'd look at it and I'd see, have they taken the time to add the extra stuff in there? I mean, one guy, there's like a character walking along, I think, that gets like blown apart or something. Something happens to the character. So I mean, a lot of people have like the character shatter and fall apart. I remember one guy, the character turned into ice, froze, and a little misted up on the inside, and then fell apart. And I thought, well, he's added a few bits and pieces in there. He's really cool. So thank you for doing that. Made my life a little easier.
You're welcome, Andy.
So so like for me, it's got to be. I don't, if it's short, it's just got to be your best stuff, and just don't do things on there that you don't want to do. So don't try and lighten texture if you're not a light and texturing artist. Like I saw a destruction reel, and it was just ambient occlusion. It was perfect. It was great. This guy just wanted to blow stuff up. He was really good at it. He didn't do any lighting and texturing. It was amazing. So it doesn't. I'm not looking for a movie. I'm just looking to see if you can do some effects and fit in the kind of context of what we do in film. So yeah, like the pyro R&D stuff, shelf button thing is so annoying. Yeah.
Stay away from that stuff. I'm gonna jump in really quick. It reminded me of a reel I saw that killed me. It goes back to the sound thing, but I actually listened to this because it was just a bit enthralling to just have to listen to it. It was actually a modeling reel, and it was about 6 minutes long with one model, and it was narrated by the person that did the model for the entire 6 minutes. And it almost killed me. So, don't do that. Because we're not going to listen to it anyway, so now it's just 6 minutes of one model over and over again.
But what a model. But what a model. And Ben, you're not maybe hiring people, but I'm sure you've seen many, many reels. What do you like to see?
Yeah, I have. My reel's 45 seconds. I just get in and get out with the best stuff. Like, I just hit them hard at the start, if I can. And I actually did cut mine to music, something that's fairly impactful. Just, I come from a music background, creating music and stuff like that too, so I have that affinity for that side, but I know that it's probably not that applicable from a hiring perspective. But I just, actually for the talk that I did today, I never had a reel prior to that. I never used one. And it was the first one probably where I had enough new content where I could pump something out that I was relatively happy with. So yeah, I felt like if you can just get in there and get it done quickly, show as much diversity if you can, and show all your skills off, and just get out and keep it clean. I think that's the best way to do it. I see a lot, as you mentioned, just looking through Vimeo or whatever, and I think the reason I had never had one previously is because I kind of always felt a bit dirty, like showing all this stuff that I didn't have a major part of. And that's why I finally got to a point this time where I could do it, because I did get my hands on a lot of the stuff in there. But like I know a lot of guys have reels, and I just know a lot of the stuff isn't really things that they've done a lot in. So I don't know. I feel like it's keep it to the point as possible, and yeah.
Andrew?
Well, I just want to make sure that I'm not viewed as a hypocrite, because when I was getting into the industry, like, reels were just all over the place. Mine was god-awful. And it was just like experiments, and, they always kind of took a chance back in those days of what someone could or couldn't be good at. Fast forward like more than 10 years, and people are basically on free form because they have movie credits, and then they put the best work from their movies onto the reel. So that's obviously what makes a professional reel. But there's a transition period where, like, I've had to review a lot of student reels. I've also had to briefly review professional reels at Digital Domain and things like that. And so what I really like to see is if they can actually solve a problem. Because the problem with the student reel, in my view, is that the target could be changed mid shot, right? Like, say, oh, I like that. I didn't really set out to do that, but I like it, so I'm going to put it on my reel. And for the individual, that's fine, but for a company or production, they have a storyboard, or they have a script, or like whatever they wanted has to be done. And so you have to figure out how to do that at all costs, right? So if there's a way to show that on the reel, I think it's reference. I think if they have a target ahead of time, then it means they couldn't just find a tutorial for it and hit the shelf buttons and things. If they show their objective before they endeavored to make that project, then like, okay, they can probably figure it out. But if they just kind of post posthumously, like do some weird thing, like, what is it? Like, I don't know what it is. So even if it looks cool, I want to see that it actually had an objective in it, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that too, especially for student reels, having like a reference objective that you're trying to achieve really helps a lot. And if you've been in the industry for like a year or two and you're a junior, you're still kind of working on that reel, then, I like to see a little text or something on each shot what your aspect of it was. Because especially in a big studio, there's like 9, 10 people that can work on a shot. So you might see that same shot over a course of like 15 different reels, and you're like, okay, so who's done what here? I don't know. I'm assuming this guy's a senior, he did the big stuff, so what did you do? So it's really important to kind of put some kind of annotation or some kind of separate breakdown that says what you did.
That's exactly what I was talking about before. Like, that you'll often see that same thing come up time and time again, but really, what did you do, sort of thing. Yeah.
Yeah, don't oversell it and don't lie. I've had people lie about what they did in the reel, and that's just like,
Totally. Yeah.
You're gonna screw yourself up. You're gonna also screw up other people that have got the same thing on the reel too, because it just puts that seed of doubt in there. So it's bad. It's really bad.
It's not a good look seeing it everywhere on the net.
And Matt, you've been in the studio, and now you're counseling students. What do you tell them?
Your advice that if it's 30 seconds, just pan out a little bit, and you're saying 45 seconds, I'm so impatient. Like,
12 seconds?
Even after like 30 seconds, I'm just going, oh, come on, show me really, everyone seems to have this sort of thing in their mind of trying to hit 3 minutes. It's like, no, like, shorter the better, like 2 minutes, I kind of feel even guilty saying that, because I know that's what everyone else says. Like, a minute for me is the maximum that I'll care. But in terms of like specifics about a showreel, especially for effects, I find the main thing that really irritates me is timing. Like, just the amount of slow-mo sims you see. Just you're just gonna look and go, have you looked at any real-life things at all in context of this particle sim you're doing? So it'll be a tower smashes, and there'll be particles floating elegantly for 5 seconds to the ground, and just put down a retime node and speed it up. Just look at reference. In terms of what you guys were saying before, I saw a reel recently where this guy, he was practicing his pyro stuff, and he'd found footage from a war of it must have been like sort of tank busting grenades, smashing things, and a really fast pyro explosion hitting very specific shapes. And this guy just matched them exactly. And I thought, that guy's going to get a job just straight away, effortlessly. Another thing that I really like to see, that I've seen a few times, is to mirror what happens in a studio, where you'll do a version 1 pass, and someone will say, "That's great, but this tendril there, could that just go this way instead?" So I've seen people do like a 4-way splits of simulations, and it's obviously the same basic setup, but in the first one, the thing goes out sideways. In the next one, it goes out and then up. The next one goes out and down, and dissipates really quickly, to show that they can do variations on a theme, and they can hit notes and address it and change it. That to me is really powerful. And as you say, the last one that really stuck in my mind is kind of chatting to people kind of getting in and saying, "Yeah, I'm working on a showreel, but I've set it rendering and it's going to take like 3 months to finish." It's like, are you a lighter renderer? No, stop it. Get a flipbook. That's totally fine. Work out a way to keep it quick. In terms of what we generally show, we've either got access to a massive render farm, and that's why we can show sexy results, or we're showing flipbooks. And that's fine. Most of what we do on a day-to-day basis tends to be a combination of flipbooks and then a huge render farm somewhere else. So if you don't have access to the render farm, show a flipbook, it's fine.
So, does anybody have any questions for any of these guys? We're in the Q&A area.
Hello, guys. I have questions to all of you regarding like a new generation of the students, because I assume like you all millennials, about like 40 years old, same like me, and at least, I mean like
I'm 22.
Yeah, I see. How many times?
Yeah, twice.
All right. So what
Security, get them out.
Yeah. What I mean, like my generation, I was trying everything, like very different fields of visual effects, like much move, comp, modeling, rigging, everything. And I feel right now that it's super helpful for me to been through the whole process. And right now I'm often see the guys like who either self-taught in effects or they finish some schools, but they so like a short-sighted, they know only effects, and there's like one polygon broken or like a wrong order of vertices, and they freaked out. They don't know what to do. They cannot like set up some render or make a pre-comp. So what will be your advice about this? Because like right now, so strict courses, like some student decided to pay for education. He will spend a year or two, get out like a diploma of Houdini FXCD, and then he will be freaked out because there's flipped normal.
Yeah. I mean, I totally, my sort of glib take on that is I give advice to people to be specialist generalists. So, but that's again comes down to this sort of monomaniacal mindset. If you want to be like the best at this thing, then you want to spend obviously most of your time in. Yeah. So, Superstar, you want to spend most of your time inside Houdini, but my background before Houdini, before film, was as kind of a ninja commercials generalist, where I'd be asked to do anything, and I really enjoyed that, and that's definitely influenced a lot of what I do, and that I can sort of solve problems before they have to go back to a previous department, or I can track, I can do bash comps, I can do quick modeling, I can animate a little bit, but that's a value add that probably not many people are lucky enough to do, because they don't have the time, or they don't have the kind of mindset to just, right, I've learned all this stuff, and now I'm going to become a beginner again in this next field, and I'm going to work on that, and then I'm going to become a beginner in the next field, and that's a big ask. If people have that mindset, it's amazing, and everyone should do it, but not everyone can do it.
Yeah, I mean, you gotta be careful you don't fall down the route of being good at all things instead of great at one thing.
Overall broader educational understanding of every department, right?
Yeah, I think it's good to have like that base knowledge. A lot of the superstars that I was referring to, they'll at least be aware of what the other departments require and a little base, so they can do some of that stuff. But they would never be able to jump in and like say I'm going to animate something or anything, right? But But I mean, it really depends what you're looking for too, because if being that generalist is really what you want to do, then yeah, commercial work or TV work is probably more in line with what might make you happy, right? Whereas film work has always been very specialized. You know, there's superstars that are very generalist, but for the most part, it's like effects does effects, lighting does lighting, this. But I mean, even effects artists will tend to light some of their own stuff, and actually some can be very good at it. A lot of the effects, that's what the nice thing about Houdini is, you know, you'll be able to, a lot of the really kind of great abstract effects will have such a shader wrapped around it that you can't possibly output it to another package because everything's just all works together. So I mean, definitely having a good knowledge of it is key, but I think it's, you know, don't lose out on being amazing at the one thing, but having a broad knowledge of everything is not a bad thing to have. Does that answer your question?
It's not like it's not a bad thing.
It's
bad thing is don't have this knowledge.
yeah, no.
Yeah, I guess you probably want to have a look at everything before you focus, I guess. So you'd hope that everybody's touched something to inform the decision. I mean, I think I started out wanting to do animation for many, many years and then ended up not doing that. So I'll definitely go around and learn the knowledge. And same as everything else that supports it, like doing your mathematics, doing your art, doing your photography, those kinds of things. You know, I guess the people who do really well have kind of been down that road for a long time. They've been either programming since they were 12 or they've been drawing since they were 6 or something, and they just all kind of add up into one big package. It's awesome.
Yeah, I mean, I came out of school a modeler, you know, and then this happened.
I'm so sorry.
Well, guys, I just want to say a massive thank you for imparting your knowledge to these people and the people on the internet.
This wasn't filmed, was it?
Sorry.
I'm sorry for everything I said. Sorry, Animalogic.
So thank you very much.